It's all hands on deck. This is war. This is Western civilization on the brink of collapse, and intentional collapse, because we're being driven that way by the current administration.
Keeping our republic is on the line, and it requires patriots with great passion, dedication, and eternal vigilance to preserve our freedoms. Jenny Beth Martin is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She is an author, a filmmaker, and one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. But the title she is most proud of is mom to her boy-girl twins. She has been at the forefront, fighting to protect America's core principles for more than a decade. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
This episode of the Jenny Beth Show was recorded on Radio Row at Turning Point Action's Restoring National Confidence Summit in Las Vegas. You're going to love my next guest. He's an attorney, a radio talk show host, a Tea Party leader, and the Republican National Committeeman from Colorado. He's also a dear friend. I'm excited to introduce you to Randy Corporon. So you're a national committee man, and Colorado has been kind of ground zero for some of the issues that we're dealing with President Trump right now. Talk about what we're dealing with and what all is happening.
Well, I'm certainly proud as the Republican National Committeeman to be on the executive committee of the Colorado GOP. That's one of the benefits that comes with this position. And under the new leadership of Dave Williams, our chair who was elected most recently, he's really taken some affirmative action. He's certainly stood up for Donald Trump when our Secretary of State and the Supreme Court all decided that he did not belong on the Colorado ballot. So that lawsuit was prosecuted. We lost in the state court. We lost in the Colorado Supreme Court. Amazingly to me, as a lawyer who, does have some constitutional understanding. So they've taken it all the way to the Supreme Court, and oral arguments will occur on February 8th. I fully expect, if not a majority, a unanimous opinion, a strong majority opinion, to say that won't happen. That's not going to stand. So that's big. Our chair there has...
Do you think that the Supreme Court justices understand an insurrection did not happen? Or do you think that they're going to wind up being so tainted by the liberal media in D.C. that they don't know they have trouble separating the facts from the media?
Well, it's a horrible risk. You have to question sometimes when you see some of the justices who vote certain ways right now, if they're in that bubble. You would hope that they'd isolate themselves from the news, or at least reach out to more information. But I think the constitutional question is still one that's easy to answer. It's not for a state to decide whether the 14th Amendment applies in this situation. It would be something that Congress would need to do. And I think it'll be overturned for that reason. And then for a appointed Secretary of State in another state to just simply unilaterally take him off in a 30-page ruling of absolute nonsense, Facebook posts and January 6th propaganda.
Which alone isn't admissible into a court of law. If you're going to put it into a court of law, both sides need to be able to argue the evidence and debate the evidence.
And Congress created a statute for insurrection. If there was an insurrection, I think the out-of-control prosecutor, Jack Smith, would have tried to charge President Trump with insurrection. And then he could have at least had his day in court.
Right.
What does a day in court mean in America right now? Unfortunately, sometimes it depends on which court you're in. But fortunately, a lot of these issues will trickle up to the Supreme Court, and I think there's still enough constitutional conservative perspective there to save us some of these what would be very damaging decisions for our country.
I think the fact that we've already gone across this line now is dangerous for the country, and I hope that the Supreme Court rights it, but it concerns me so much when I see some of the things that governors and Secretary of States, or in Georgia, a district attorney, and the same goes for New York, are doing that. And maybe it's not a district attorney, maybe it's a state attorney in New York, but they're doing to Trump, and it's scary. And if the tables were turned and this were happening to a Democrat, it would still be wrong. At this point, I don't know that we can prevent that from happening to a Democrat, because they've just opened a Pandora's box.
Yeah, it's funny. The Democrats always accuse the other side of what they're doing. And they lie. They're committing lawfare. Lawfare used to be something we used to talk about. And now it's a in-your-face, out in the open, straight-up tactic of the radical left. And, of course, the idea that Donald Trump would talk about retribution or, getting back in office and maybe righting some of these wrongs, they accuse him of being the fascist dictator, going to militarize, all of those things. It's nonsense, but it's effective in the corrupt, coordinated, Democrat-controlled media machine. Fortunately, they're losing influence, and viewership daily.
Right.
Elon Musk opening up Twitter to allow the other side to be heard again. Oh, a tremendous start. The exposure of Mark Zuckerberg and the $430 million that went to CTCL. Our own Republican nominee for Secretary of State in Colorado, a board member of CTCL, the organization that funneled Zuckerbucks into just the right Democrat districts to flip the 2020 election, if you believe the count, to flip the 2020 election by maybe 40,000 votes in just the right places. And so I always try and remind listeners and people when I get a chance to talk to them, though, that in spite of the, exaggerated popular vote outcome for Biden, the actual margin of victory, if the numbers are accurate, 20 to maybe 40,000 votes in just the right places. And now those same people who didn't know that Hunter Biden laptop was true, that believed the 50-plus national security experts who said Russia collusion was real and the laptop was, just more Russian propaganda. All of those things, one poll said that 10% of voters would have flipped their vote had they known Hunter Biden laptop information and knew that it was true. So the margins were so close in spite of all of the COVID modifications of our election procedures and processes and laws that now these same people are living through, getting close to 4 years under virtually all Democrat control and a inept, putative president who admittedly, according to her, showered with his own daughter and did all kinds of, plagiarized, had to drop out of 2 prior presidential elections because of his own lies. And now we're seeing what it's like to live under that kind of decision making. So I think it could be a banner year for Republicans. I hope the RNC, of which I'm a member, really gets focused on taking advantage of things like what we're at right now, turning point action, getting young people, getting grassroots organized and trained. It seems like the RNC is trying to do the same thing in a different place. And why we would duplicate efforts and not connect and let bygones be bygones is really, really troubling to me. And I hope to talk about that quite a bit at the upcoming RNC meeting.
Well, I hope that you do. And I think what is happening right here for people who are listening and watching may not know, Turning Point has brought in a lot of party chairmen from around the country and also other party leaders, county leaders, and the training and equipping them. And it's really fascinating to see. And Randy, I've never heard of this happening before, where there is an organization bringing in county party chairmen and the top county leaders in the top counties around the country and saying, hey, meet one another, get to know one another, let's make a plan, figure out what you're going to do. Here are all the different tools and resources from various different groups that you can use to learn how to do what you need to do to be able to get out the vote. I've never seen this happen. There are big conferences, but there's nothing that has been focused just on this group of people and interconnecting them. And it's so desperately needed. It's part of why when we started Tea Party Patriots, we didn't have all that structure where you had to report to your district chair and then you had to report to a state chair and then you could get to the national organization. It's just absolutely not. We are going to be flat and our leaders are going to be able to interconnect and communicate with one another across the entire country, because I had experienced that and in my local party and in the state party in Georgia. It's just so hard to claw through that bureaucracy.
Yeah, the RNC is it's hard to turn the Titanic around. And, I'm excited by, for instance, in the last chair race, there was almost a third of us who voted and listened to our constituents.
Right.
Ronna McDaniel has been a very sweet person to me. She's did a lot for Donald Trump when she was chair of Michigan, and she became the chair of the RNC at his request, and reran that second time at his request. But I had no constituents saying we want the same leadership again. So I listened to that and voted for someone else. Voted for Harmeet Dhillon, and was public about it. I had Ronna on my show. I had Harmeet on my show. I had Mike Lindell on my show. I wasn't, no backroom deals for me.
Right.
And I think that RNC members who voted for Ronna again, in light of the fact that none of our constituents were asking us to do that, are going to face a real uphill battle in their re-election bids, which will be happening this year. A lot of us, including me, will end, this is my first term, will end their terms at the last day of the presidential convention in Milwaukee. But I think it's a great sign that more and more people are making that happen. And I will say that the RNC has been doing regional fly-ins where they've brought in chairs and others from out of certain regions to meet and learn and get educated. Unfortunately, we're duplicating efforts in a lot of places, and it's because our leadership at the RNC won't talk to the Scott Pressers of the world. They don't. They want to spin what Charlie Kirk and Turning Point Action are doing here in a bad light. And I just don't see it that way. It's all hands on deck. This is war. This is Western civilization on the brink of collapse, and intentional collapse, because we're being driven that way by the current administration. Yeah,
and I think that the most important thing that I focus on, I'm in a different position than you are.
Sure.
So you are in a position where you can affect what the Republican National Committee, the decisions that they are making. And everyone can by being a precinct committeeman and getting involved, but you get to have those meeting-to-meeting decisions.
One of 168, so it's an important vote.
It is an important vote. Because I can't do that. We just do everything that we can to make sure we're informing people about the issues, equipping them, recruiting them, training them, and then making sure they are activated. Whether last election cycle, we're very focused on election security. We're still focused on that in 2024, but we're also focused on winning in 2024. And so we'll be doing a lot more get out the vote this election cycle. And I just try to go, okay, all of that stuff is going on and I can't ignore it. I know it's going on and we need to address it, but we've got a country to save. I'm not doing this and traveling around the country the way I do and working 20, 22, sometimes 23-hour, 24-hour days just because I just have fun with it. I'm doing it because I care about the country.
Right.
I'm doing it because I care about the country. And so I just sort of have to turn out some of the noise and focus on what is the most important thing at hand.
Yeah. Well, it's real easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, the diatribes, the petty infighting and all that. And I always encourage people to take a moment, step back, take that satellite view, and just see how much has already changed. Even just during this term of Joe Biden, from the perspective of people who are fighting for constitutionally limited government, like you and me. We now own the issue of transgender men participating and winning and knocking women out of awards and scholarships and complete careers. We have a very strong platform with school boards and the physical and emotional destruction of our children, literally being willing to cut off body parts and give, put hormones in them and that sort of thing, and intentionally keep that information or those choices from any parental involvement.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And all of these things have just opened up over the last several years. And I'll tell you what, with issues like that, with America facing high prices, limited energy, now wars on all fronts. Donald Trump, the only president in decades to not actually take us into a war.
Right.
And now we're fighting on multiple fronts. Three soldiers killed.
Oh, yes.
Just the other day. And then the border, an invasion of our country, illegal aliens. I get so angry with Republicans who buy into the language of the left. Now we hear migrants from Republicans, or
it was undocumented workers, and then it turned into migrants. in our country illegally. They're illegal immigrants, illegal aliens.
Jenny Beth, I was doing my show the other night, Saturday night, and I watched during a break, I was online and I watched a video that popped up on a Twitter feed, and it was 5 young military-aged men on a speedboat rushing onto the shore of did you see it? A California city. It started with an L. I forget the name of it now. It wasn't Los Angeles. It was more of a suburban city. And the boat disappears, and all of a sudden the camera pans around, and all 5 of them were up and scattering into a neighborhood, just running as fast as they could into a neighborhood. Imagine how often that's going on different aspects of our border, on top of the tens of thousands that you could just watch walking in.
And if it wasn't happening often, it's going to now, because they just figured out for sure that they can do it.
Yeah.
The border situation it just makes me so distressed. It really makes me so distressed. And I sit there and I look at everything that's going on. You hear Congress. I'm not sure exactly when we'll be playing this recording. So the Senate, I call it the amnesty bill, the amnesty and open border bill, whether it's still alive or dead or not. I don't know what the status of it will be when we air, but I'm so frustrated by that. I'm like, it is saying that Biden not enforcing the law, disregarding the law is okay, and we're going to reward him. And the numbers that they are talking about, the people who've crafted the deal are trying right now, as we're recording this, desperately to say, no, you're misunderstanding, that's being misconstrued. It's hard for us not to misconstrue it. And if you want to talk about a number that's acceptable, find a number that doesn't equal 1.8 million people a year coming into the country illegally. So I can rant and go on, but my point is I get so frustrated, and I just have to go, okay, I want new legislation passed. I want it signed into law. So how am I going to get there? Because I don't have the votes right now to do that, and I certainly don't have a conservative in the White House to sign it into law. So we have to secure elections, and then we have to win elections so that we have a fighting chance in 2015 and in 2025. And even if we secure and we win and we get to 2025, our work only just begins. It's not over. It's just beginning.
Yeah. Well, we saw during the Trump administration how even people that he appointed, who he believed at the time, because they were working for the president, they would support his agenda. He talked about the deep state, but he got a face full. Chuck Schumer talked about how, these intelligence agencies and these governmental agencies have 50 ways from Sunday or something like that was the quote, to mess with you, and that Donald Trump ought to be really careful. So going back to the immigration thing, we need a wall.
We do.
The number needs to be 0, right, to the best that we can enforce it. Passing new laws isn't going to matter because Biden is a lawless president. He won't enforce any of those laws. So it's a big joke. I think Senator Langford from Oklahoma is committing career suicide by participating in this and then not being able to talk about it. I don't want negotiations behind closed doors.
And you don't even have a bill out. You're sitting there trying to get people to support talking points and then getting upset because they're looking at the talking points and they're upset by them.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that our government now somehow goes on behind closed doors, not the way it was designed, not the way that it should work. And that's the way bad things happen. And I'll tell you what, when you see what this organization, Turning Point Action, what Tea Party Patriots Action has been able to accomplish, we have applications now, we have trainings now, we have documentaries and videos, and more people are waking up every single day. As bad as it is, it's hard not to feel optimistic as we move forward because, people are really saying enough is enough. And it's gotten down to the level where, black people are supporting Donald Trump, Hispanic people are supporting Donald Trump, gay people are supporting.
Snoop Dogg came out supporting Donald Trump.
Came out, and I'm not a category guy. I think Americans make decisions, but the Democrats create all of these different categories, and they've had all these constituencies that just for decades have just said yes, these guys, because those other guys are bad. Reality is setting in to all these different groups of people. could be really, really big this year.
I hope it is. I hope it is because the future of our country depends on it. We have to get this right. I'm not sure how many more times we can get elections wrong as an American people choosing the wrong people and expect America to hang on. America, the country, needs us to stand up and do what's right for her, the country.
Well, I'm involved in litigations with regard to voting machines, represent the Gateway Pundit in one of them. I'm a defendant in another because I've talked about stolen elections. And I do not believe that the 2020 election was legitimate, that the American people chose creepy, sleepy, showers with daughter Joe Biden. But you don't need to argue about machines or, computer issues to make that case. All you have to do is look at the laws that were changed, the signature verifications that were pulled back, the extended receipt of ballot deadlines, the mailboxes on every Democrat corner. And, it's obvious for anybody who cares to look. So I also have optimism that, you're on this call sometimes that I'm on every week with Cleta Mitchell, looking at election integrity around the country. And that call has 60 or 70 strong leaders on it that are then filtering out into their neighborhoods, their communities, or whatever. So if there was chicanery in 2020, it's going to be a whole lot harder to pull off this time around. And we're not, who knows what could drop on us, I suppose, as far as the next virus or, any of those things. But, I still believe God is in heaven. I believe that there's still some time left for America. And so it's an honor and a pleasure to be in this fight and to be in this fight with, original Tea Party patriots like you.
Well, it's an honor to be in the fight with people like you. We wouldn't have a Tea Party Patriots without people like you. And you've been involved. It's just been years. I don't remember the year, but I remember first going to Colorado and I remember the restaurant we were sitting at where I met you for the first time, and Regina was there. I made sure we were connected and introduced. And I'm so grateful for that connection. I'm so grateful for everything that you do. And there are people like you around the entire country. And there are people now like you in that 168-member body in the RNC who have been a part of the Tea Party or been a part of conservative activism and are stepping up and trying to help the Republican Party be true to its conservative roots.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to hear the stories of some of the people that have found their way onto the RNC. It was the last thing I would have ever thought about. Yeah. Especially as a Tea Party guy. I would show up at local Republican breakfasts and events, and I'd be listened to. There'd be back and forth, but I wasn't considered for some kind of role. But the grassroots, the base of the Republican Party in Colorado is starving for people who are constitutional conservatives, who say what they mean what they say, don't make deals behind closed doors, and are out there fighting for what they want instead of what the consultants and the big money donors and everybody else seems to want. And it's very exciting to be a part of a Republican Party that's operating like that.
Well, that is wonderful, Randy. Thank you so much for spending time with us
Such
today.
A joy. It's great to
and
see
thank you for everything that you do for our country, from your radio show to your work as an attorney defending liberty and the Constitution, and to the work you've done for the Tea Party movement and continue to do, and in the RNC. You're just amazing, and you really are one of my favorite people.
Well, it's so great to see you, and thank you for all that, and I'll see you in there.
Sounds great. Thank you so
God
much.
bless.
And that is Randy Corporon, who is from Colorado. He's a national committeeman from Colorado to the Republican National Committee. And I'm Jenny Beth Martin with the Jenny Beth Show, and we're recording this from Turning Point Action's Restoring National Confidence Summit in Vegas. And we're on Media Row, so you might have heard a little bit of background noise, but it's happening here, and we're working to make a difference for the country.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin, produced by Kevin Mooneyhan, and directed by Luke Livingston. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
If you like this episode, let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment or a 5-star review. And if you want to be the first to know every time we drop a new episode, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for whichever platform you're listening on. If you do these simple things, it will help the podcast grow, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much.